Throughout history, the world has thought up more theories of ideal government than I would care to count. The world has seen many of these systems in practice, and unsurprisingly, these ideal systems are often not so ideal when implemented. A republic, for example, while brilliantly argued for by Plato, has no checks to ensure a non-corrupt leader. For the very purpose of disallowing corrupt and self-serving leaders, the theory of democracy came about. A government system where members of the government only retain power when the people allow it. In theory, a democracy is a perfect prevention of the corruption and self-serving nature of a republic, and Americans have tried their best to convince the rest of the world of this. Even though the Cold War is over, Americans are clearly still trying to insert their ideologies into other countries. The control Americans have over the global economy has ultimately been used as a chokehold to spread the ideals of democracy and capitalism. This is certainly one of the most ironic phenomena in history, as this country is currently ruled by lobbyists, large corporations, and the notorious top 1%. This country is as close to a democracy as Plato was Nietzschean. Citizenship in the United States is granted, but there is always the understanding that such a grant can be renounced. Therefore, according to Gene Hampton, it is assumed that if citizenship is not voluntarily and unitarily renounced after reaching the age of maturity, then the responsibilities and rights of citizenship are thereby consented to. By agreeing to live under this government, we enter into a contract that requires the active participation of each citizen in the government, a contract that requires each and every citizen to do all in their power to prevent corruption. According to Peter Singer, if it is in our power to prevent something bad from happening, without thereby sacrificing anything of comparable moral importance, we ought morally to do it. It is clear corruption of government officials is not a good thing. Ultimately, corruption is a form of coercion. Short periods of benevolent despotism are possible, but corruption inevitably leads to the destruction of democracy. It brings us right back to a state of suppression where the general masses are deprived not only of an effective government, but of their rights and experiences. As John Dewey put it, the individuals of a submerged mass may not be very wise, but there is one thing they are wiser about than anybody else can be, and that is where the shoe pinches, the troubles they suffer. If corruption is allowed, the government will be allowed to go back to a state where the real needs of the people are unknowable and ignored. Therefore, if it is within our power to prevent corruption, and it is, then we ought to prevent corruption. The fallacy is that corruption comes from individuals, but the real truth of the matter is that it is up to the people to decide, determine, and ultimately dictate whether or not corruption will be tolerated. There will always be those seeking power for self-serving reasons. There is no changing this. What can be changed is the people's actions. The people have the power to prevent any individual from taking that power from them. Therefore, we have a moral duty to uphold our democracy. We have a moral duty to do all in our power to prevent corruption. And yet we are failing. Our government is only run by corrupted officials. This is ensured by the campaign process, as the only way any official is elected in the first place is through long campaigns in which their fundraising is political bribery in all but name. And it is no different after the election. Even though there is knowledge of corruption, there is little action taken. To see the disapproval of the people of the government, all you need to do is log into Facebook or other social media accounts to see the anger and discontentedness. Even with such clear discontentedness, in the 2016 presidential election of Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton, 55% of the eligible population abstained from voting. Even fewer among us can name the elected senators, members of Congress, and representatives that we voted into office, or even more importantly, their agendas. Who among us is truly aware of the issues facing this country? It is time to take action ourselves. Nearly the entire population, me included, is failing in our moral duty to take political action. It is time for us to choose self-edification over ignorance. It is time for us to wake from our passivity and take action. We cannot afford to continue to wait for the politicians to actually clean up Washington, as every one of them claims to do but never undertakes. It is time to get our hands dirty and take action upon ourselves. It is time to dictate our own lives.